The declaration of war. The Empire emerges. The stars shimmered in the endless void, a sea of darkness lit by the glow of distant suns. Deep in the Orion sector, an enormous fleet drifted through space like a silent storm. Their hulls were black as night, their weapons gleaming with cold, deadly precision. This was the Zorveth Dominion, a ruthless empire that had conquered dozens of worlds, crushing entire civilizations under its rule. For centuries, they had spread terror across the galaxy. To them, war was nothing but a game, a cruel sport where the strong consumed the weak. And now their eyes turned toward humanity, a young, expanding species that had begun settling beyond their homeworld, Earth. The Zorveth had watched the humans for years, analyzing their ships, their colonies, their defenses. They saw weakness. They saw a species that had never faced an enemy like them. And so, the decision was made. The War Council of the Dominion gathered on their capital world, Varanox Prime, a planet of towering spires and endless war factories. Seated in the High Chamber, Supreme Warlord Korthan Maladrak studied the holographic map before him. The image showed human territory, a small, scattered collection of colonies surrounded by vast, empty space. A primitive species, one of his generals scoffed. They have no empire, no legacy. They are nothing. Korthan's golden eyes burned with amusement. Yet they dare to expand. They dare to claim space that belongs to the Dominion. The room filled with laughter. The Zorveth had encountered many species before. Some had fought. Some had surrendered. But all had fallen. The humans would be no different. Send the message, Korthan commanded. Let them know their time is over. The message of doom. Across human-controlled space, alarms blared as an unknown transmission forced its way through every network. From the bustling cities of Earth to the remote outposts on Mars and Titan, the message played on every screen, in every language. A towering Zorveth warlord appeared, standing on the bridge of a massive battleship. His armored figure was monstrous, his voice deep and filled with scorn. Humans of Earth, hear these words. You have expanded where you do not belong. The Zorveth Dominion claims this galaxy, and you are but insects crawling in the dark. A holographic projection appeared, showing the destruction of entire planets by Zorveth warships, worlds reduced to ash, civilizations erased in moments. You have one choice. Surrender and serve the Dominion, or be wiped from existence. The message ended with a symbol, an iron fist crushing a planet. Panic spread through human worlds. News networks were in chaos. Leaders scrambled for answers. The United Earth Council held an emergency meeting, their faces pale as they watched the footage. They'd destroyed entire species, one general whispered. They are more powerful than anything we faced. The fear was real. Humanity had fought wars before, but never against an empire that spanned the stars. Never against an enemy that hunted civilizations. But amidst the fear, one voice rose above the others. Admiral Elias Carter, the supreme commander of Earth's military, stood up. His jaw was tight, his eyes filled with fire. This is what they do, he said. They expect us to kneel, to beg for mercy. He looked around the room, at the uncertain faces of politicians, scientists, and generals. He saw doubt, hesitation. But he knew one truth: humans did not kneel. Slowly, he raised his hand and tapped a control panel. A message began to broadcast, sent across every channel, reaching the depths of space. It was a simple, direct response to the Zorveth Dominion. You want war? Then war it is. The room fell silent. No more discussion, no more fear. Humanity had made its choice. The beginning of the storm. Far across the void, aboard his massive warship, Supreme Warlord Korthan watched the human response. He expected fear, surrender, maybe even desperate pleas for peace. Instead, he received defiance. A slow, menacing smile spread across his face. So, he murmured, the humans wish to fight. His generals looked uneasy. Perhaps they do not understand the power of the Dominion. Corthan chuckled. Then we shall teach them. He turned toward the massive viewport, watching as his fleet began to move. Thousands of warships, battlecruisers, dreadnoughts, and destroyers, prepared for war. Prepare the invasion force, he ordered. We will burn their worlds to the ground. Engines roared to life. Weapons systems powered up. The Zorvath armada surged forward like a tidal wave of death. The war had begun, and the galaxy would soon learn what kind of enemy humanity truly was. The first strike. Humanity fights back. The Zorvath Dominion moved like a shadow across the stars, their fleet heading straight for human territory. The vast armada of warships, each one the size of a city, surged forward with a single purpose: annihilation. Supreme Warlord Corthan Malodrak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Void Reaper, his golden eyes gleaming with anticipation. The humans had refused to kneel. A mistake. Target their outermost colonies first, Corthan ordered. Crush them. Show them what happens to those who defy the Dominion. Within hours, the first Zorvath warships entered human-controlled space. Their target, Outpost Theta 9, a small but strategic human colony on the edge of known space. The invasion had begun. The Battle of Theta 9. The people of Theta 9 had received the warning. They had seen the Zorvath War Declaration, but no one expected the enemy to arrive so soon. Incoming ships. The alarm blared through the command center. Hundreds of enemy vessels appeared on the colony's long-range scanners. Commander Rachel Hayes, the leader of Theta 9's defense forces, clenched her fists. She had one battlecruiser, a few frigates, and some planetary defenses. Against a full Zorvath invasion force, it was nothing. They outnumber us 20-1, her lieutenant whispered. Hayes exhaled sharply. Then we make them pay for every inch of space they take. Her orders were clear: stall the invasion. Give Earth time to prepare. Theta 9's fleet rushed forward, engaging the enemy head-on. Lasers and missiles tore through the void as the two sides clashed. The first human ships were destroyed in seconds. But the humans fought with desperation and strategy. Instead of standing still, they used hit-and-run tactics, striking the weak points of Zorvath ships before vanishing behind asteroid fields. For the first time, the Zorvath were caught off guard. They were used to enemies that surrendered quickly, not ones that fought with such ferocity. Inside the Void Reaper, Warlord Corthan narrowed his eyes as reports came in. Their defenses are stronger than anticipated, one of his officers admitted. They're using stealth maneuvers, electronic warfare. They fight like cornered beasts. Corthan smirked. Then let's remind them why the Dominion rules this galaxy. He gave a new order: unleash the dreadnoughts. Two massive warships, each over 5 kilometers long, emerged from hyperspace. Their weapons glowed with terrifying energy. With a single blast, one of Theta 9's largest space stations was obliterated instantly. The shockwaves sent debris crashing into the colony's surface. Fires erupted across the main city. The battle turned into a massacre. The last stand. Commander Hayes watched in horror as her fleet was torn apart. She knew what came next: the ground invasion. If the Zorvath landed troops, millions would die. She refused to let that happen. Turning to her officers, she made the hardest decision of her life. Activate the Scorched Sky Protocol, she commanded. The room fell silent. But, Commander, that will destroy the entire colony. I know, she said, voice grim. But if we don't, the Zorvath will take Theta 9 and use it as a foothold to invade the rest of our space. Her hands trembled as she pressed the final authorization key. A series of nuclear-powered fusion warheads buried deep within the colony's surface began to arm themselves. She sent a final message to Earth. Theta 9 is lost. We're taking them down with us. Tell humanity to fight, to never kneel. With a deep breath, she gave the last order of her life. Detonate. The explosion that shook the war. As the Zorvath landing forces descended, a bright light consumed the entire colony. a massive explosion erupted from the planet's core. The force of the detonation ripped through the atmosphere, creating a firestorm that swallowed the invading ships whole. In seconds, Theta 9 was gone, and with it, half the Zorvath fleet was destroyed. On the bridge of the Void Reaper, Warlord Corthan stared at the screen, his amusement replaced by shock. They destroyed their own colony. One of his generals whispered. Corthan's expression darkened. No, they destroyed us. For the first time in centuries, an enemy had inflicted real damage on the Dominion. The Zorvath had expected fear and surrender. Instead, they found defiance and sacrifice. As the fires of Theta 9 faded into the void, one thing became clear. Humanity would not break easily. The war had only just begun. The war spreads. Humanity strikes back. The destruction of Theta 9 sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The Zorvath Dominion had expected an easy victory, a quick conquest. Instead, they had suffered a devastating loss. Half of their invasion fleet had been wiped out in the nuclear firestorm. Supreme Warlord Corthan Maladrak watched the aftermath from the bridge of the Void Reaper. His golden eyes narrowed as he studied the burning debris floating in space. Madness, one of his generals muttered. They would rather destroy their own colony than let us take it. Corthan exhaled slowly. No, not madness. Defiance. The humans had sent a clear message. They would rather die than kneel. For the first time in centuries, the Zorvath felt uncertainty. But Corthan was not one to back down. He turned to his officers. This does not change our mission, he growled. We do not retreat. We advance. Earth's response. Back on Earth, the United Earth Council had received the final transmission from Theta 9. Silence filled the war room as they watched the screen replay Commander Hayes' last words. Tell humanity to fight, to never kneel. Admiral Elias Carter, leader of Earth's military forces, stood from his chair. His eyes burned with fury. They wanted war, he said. Now we give it to them. Earth's leaders knew they couldn't win a direct fight. The Zorvath had more ships, more soldiers, and more resources, but humanity had something else: strategy, technology, and an unbreakable will. Our fleets must not fight them head-on, Admiral Carter declared. We bleed them dry. We cut off their supplies, sabotage their ships, and hit them where it hurts. A new strategy was born: the Shadow War. The Shadow War begins. Humanity launched dozens of stealth missions across the galaxy. Small, elite strike teams infiltrated Zorvath supply lines, planting viruses into their command networks, hacking their systems, and turning their own technology against them. In deep space, human warships used hit-and-run tactics, attacking Zorvath patrols before disappearing into asteroid fields and nebula clouds. The Zorvath began losing warships, fuel stations, and supply convoys at an alarming rate. What is happening? One Zorvath admiral roared as another convoy exploded in a surprise attack. They're fighting like ghosts, a panicked officer responded. The Battle of Outpost Delta 4. One of the biggest turning points came at Outpost Delta 4, a critical Zorvath command station. A small human fleet, led by Captain Daniel Reeves, launched a daring midnight assault. Their mission: disable the enemy station and hijack their database. Using advanced cloaking technology, human ships slipped past the Zorvath defenses. They hacked into the station's systems, shutting down its weapons and shields. Then, in a sudden ambush, human marines stormed the outpost, taking the Zorvath commanders completely by surprise. Within 2 hours, Outpost Delta 4 was under human control. The most valuable prize: a Zorvath war map detailing their entire invasion plan. When Admiral Carter saw the stolen data, he smiled for the first time since the war began. We know their next move, he said. Now we make them pay. The Zorvath's growing fear. With every defeat, ambush, and sabotage, the Zorvath's frustration grew. They fight like cowards. One Zorvath general snarled. They hide in the dark, striking from the shadows. Warlord Corthan clenched his fists. He was beginning to understand humanity's true strength. "They are not cowards," he said. "They are predators." And for the first time, the Zorveth Dominion felt something they had never felt before. Fear, humanity's secret weapon, the game changer. The war had changed. At the start, the Zorveth Dominion expected a swift conquest. But now, their fleets were bleeding, their supply lines were shattered, and their generals were furious. The humans were not fighting like prey. They were fighting like hunters. Warlord Corthan Maladrak stood in the war chamber of the Void Reaper, staring at the glowing holographic map of the battlefield. Red zones flashed everywhere: human attacks, ambushes, and sabotage operations. Every day, more Zordath warships disappeared without a trace. "This is unacceptable," one of his admirals growled. These humans are nothing. How are they doing this?" Corthan's golden eyes burned with quiet fury. "Because they are not fighting like an empire." He turned to his commanders. "They are fighting like a species that refuses to die. A desperate search for victory." The Zorveth needed to turn the tide, and they needed to do it fast. Corthan ordered a new strategy: overwhelm the humans with brute force. Massive Zorvath armadas began attacking human colonies at once, forcing the defenders to spread thin. New war factories were built, producing ships faster than ever before. Entire planets were enslaved, forcing their populations to build weapons for the Dominion. They thought this would break humanity. It didn't. Instead, it made them more dangerous, because while the Zorveth focused on brute strength, humanity had been building something in secret, something that would change the war forever. Project Revenant, the unseen weapon. Deep beneath the surface of Luna Base, humanity's most brilliant scientists and engineers have been working on a classified project, Project Revenant. Only a handful of people knew the full details, but the results were terrifying. The first warship of its kind, smarter than any eye, faster than any Zorvath ship, completely invisible to enemy sensors. Its name, the Revenant. A stealth battleship coded in quantum cloaking technology that rendered it undetectable. It could drift through enemy fleets unseen, strike without warning, and disappear before they could react. The Zorveth believed they were the hunters. But now, humanity had built the ultimate ghost, and it was ready for war. The Revenant's first mission, the Dominion's flagship dreadnought, the Wrath of Corthan, was moving toward Sigma Prime, a human colony still holding out against invasion. If the Zorveth reached the planet, millions would die. But before the invasion could begin, something happened. In the darkness of space, unseen by enemy eyes, the Revenant activated. The silent ambush. On board the Wrath of Corthan, alarms suddenly blared. Unknown contact detected. "Where?" the captain demanded. "There's nothing on sensors." Before anyone could answer, the ship shook violently. An explosion ripped through its hull. Weapons turrets went offline. Shields collapsed. The Revenant had struck. The first Ghost warship had snuck past every Zorvath defense and delivered a direct hit to the Dominion's most powerful vessel. The attack was surgical, precise. By the time the Zorvath tried to return fire, the Revenant was already gone. A second blast shattered the ship's engines, sending it into a slow death spiral. The Dominion's proudest warship, once thought unstoppable, was now burning in the void. For the first time in history, a Zorvath dreadnought had been taken down by a single human ship, and no one ever saw it coming. The war changes forever. The attack sent shockwaves through the Dominion. Their invincible war machine had been crippled. Their best technology had been defeated. And worst of all, they had no idea how it happened. Warlord Corthan clenched his fists as the reports came in. "They have built a phantom," he muttered. The war had transformed. No longer was it a battle of strength. Now, humanity had the upper hand. Now, the hunters were being hunted, and the Dominion was running out of time. The turning point. Humanity strikes with full force. The war was no longer the same. The Zorvath Dominion, once an unstoppable empire, was losing control. Their fleets were bleeding. Their warships were vanishing without a trace. Their supply lines were collapsing. And worst of all, they didn't know how humanity was doing it. The Revenant had changed everything. It was unseen. It was unstoppable. It was hunting the hunters. And now, humanity was ready to push back. Corthan's desperation. Inside the massive war room of the Void Reaper, Supreme Warlord Corthan Maladrak paced back and forth, his fury barely contained. His most powerful warship destroyed. His armies struggling against an enemy that refused to break. His empire no longer feared. "Tell me we have found their ghost ship," he growled at his intelligence officers. One of them, a nervous Zorvath lieutenant, swallowed hard. We still can't track it, Supreme Warlord. It doesn't leave a trace." Corthan's fist slammed into the table, denting the metal. "This is unacceptable," he roared. "We outnumber them. We have ruled this galaxy for centuries. How can a primitive species defy us?" One of his generals spoke carefully. "Perhaps we should consider negotiations." Silence. The room grew ice-cold. Slowly, Corthan turned, his golden eyes burning with rage. "Negotiations," he repeated, "with the creatures who humiliated us." The general stiffened. "Supreme Warlord, we." Corthan drew his blade and cut the general down where he stood. His body collapsed to the floor. The room fell deathly silent. "There will be no peace," Corthan hissed. "We end this war now. We throw everything we have at them." He pointed at the galactic war map. "We burn their worlds. We crush their spirit. We make them beg for mercy." His officers hesitated but obeyed. The order was sent. The largest invasion fleet in Dominion history was assembled. And its target was clear: Earth. The battle for Earth begins. Humanity had expected this. From the moment Theta 9 fell, from the moment the Revenant struck, they knew the Zorvath would eventually come for their homeworld. And so, they had prepared. As the Zorvath Armada approached, Earth's defense fleet stood ready. But it wasn't just warships waiting for them. Humanity had mined the entire approach to the solar system with hidden traps. AI-controlled missile platforms, electromagnetic disruptors, stealth drones ready to ambush. As soon as the first wave of Zorvath ships entered the system, chaos erupted. Explosions tore through the fleet. Ships lost control. Systems went offline. The humans struck first. And then, the real battle began. The fury of humanity. From Luna Base, Admiral Elias Carter watched the enemy fleet burn. He turned to his officers. "Deploy the Revenant." The ghost ship slipped into the battlefield unseen, weaving between enemy warships and tearing them apart from within. Zorvath dreadnoughts were disabled, their weapons turned against them, their crews helpless. Meanwhile, Earth's fleet engaged in full-force combat. Humanity had smaller ships. Humanity had fewer numbers. But they had willpower. They fought like demons. Human bombers flew straight into enemy fire, targeting weak spots with pinpoint precision. Strike teams infiltrated enemy capital ships, taking over command bridges and turning the enemy's weapons against themselves. Ground forces prepared planetary defenses, ensuring that if the Zorvath landed, they would face hell itself. The battle raged across space, but the Zorvath were not winning. And for the first time, the mighty Dominion realized they might lose. The breaking point. Deep in the battlefield, Corthan's flagship, the Void Reaper, led the final charge. Enraged by his fleet's losses, the warlord personally took command, determined to wipe out Earth's defenses himself. But as he moved forward, a single transmission reached him, a human voice, calm, confident. It was Admiral Carter. "You're not the first empire that thought it could break us," Carter said. "And you won't be the last." Corthan sneered. Brave words from a man whose world is about to burn. Carter chuckled. Is it? And then, from the darkness, the Revenant appeared. The final blow. The Zorvath never saw it coming. The Revenant struck the Void Reaper at point-blank range, disabling its shields and crippling its engines. Zorvath crew members screamed as explosions ripped through the mighty warship. Corthan refused to believe it. His flagship dying. But it was real. His officers panicked. "W, we have to abandon ship." Corthan clenched his fists. He could not accept this. The Dominion did not lose. And yet here he was, watching his fleet fall apart, his empire's dream turning to ash. With one last furious roar, Corthan refused to flee. He stayed aboard his dying ship as it was consumed by fire. As the Void Reaper collapsed into a burning wreck, the remaining Zorvath forces broke. They had lost. The once feared Zorvath Dominion, rulers of the stars, had fallen to the one species they had underestimated: humanity. The aftermath. A galaxy changed forever. The battle was over. Across the shattered battlefield, humanity's warships stood victorious. Earth had survived. The Zorvath Dominion was no more. The few surviving warlords fled into the void, leaderless, broken, hunted. Humanity had done the impossible. They had defied an empire. They had rewritten history, and they had proven one truth to the galaxy. Never underestimate humanity. The fall of the Dominion. The empire crumbles. The Zorvath Dominion was dying. What was once the most feared empire in the galaxy had been broken, humiliated, and scattered. With the destruction of the Void Reaper and the death of Supreme Warlord Corthan Maladrak, the remaining Zorvath commanders panicked. Some fled. Some tried to regroup. But most realized the truth. The Dominion was finished. Chaos across the empire. News of the Zorvath's defeat at Earth spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Slave worlds revolted, rising up against their former masters. Zorvath generals turned on each other, fighting for control over the crumbling empire. Former allies abandoned them, unwilling to be dragged down with a doomed cause. For the first time in thousands of years, the Dominion was on the run, and humanity was not done yet. Humanity's final offensive. Admiral Elias Carter stood aboard the bridge of his flagship, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. The Zorvath were scattered, vulnerable, weak. "This is our chance," he said. "We don't let them escape. We finish this war." Earth's fleets, once on the defensive, now went on the attack. Strike teams hunted down Zorvath warlords, ensuring no one could rebuild their empire. Human warships raided their last strongholds, forcing the Dominion to retreat deeper into the void. The Revenant and its fleet of stealth ships assassinated high-ranking Zorvath leaders, one by one. The humans were no longer fighting for survival. Now, they were destroying their enemy, piece by piece. The last warlord stands. On a distant world, one last Zorvath stronghold remained. Deep within the fortress city of Zarlok Prime, the final surviving warlord, Zalthar Revik, gathered his remaining forces. His empire was gone. His fleets were destroyed. But he refused to surrender. "If the Dominion must fall," he growled, gripping his blade, "then we will drag humanity down with us." He activated the Doom Protocol, a desperate plan to detonate a chain of Zorvath doomsday weapons, wiping out entire sectors of space. But humanity had already anticipated this. As the countdown began, a strike team of elite human soldiers, led by Captain Daniel Reeves, infiltrated the fortress. They had one mission: stop the detonation and end the Dominion forever. The final battle. Inside Zarlok Prime, alarms blared as human soldiers stormed the fortress. Captain Reeves moved like a shadow, leading his team through dark corridors, dodging enemy patrols, planting explosives. Zorvath warriors fought back, but they were outgunned, outmatched, and demoralized. The war was already lost. Reeves finally reached the control chamber, where Warlord Salthar stood before the activation console. The warlord turned, his golden eyes burning with hatred. "You think you have won," Salvar snarled. "Even if you stop this, we will rise again." Reeves raised his rifle. "No, you won't." A single shot ended the last warlord of the Zorvath Dominion. And with his death, the countdown was terminated. The Dominion's final weapon had failed. The war was truly over. The galaxy after the war. With their last stronghold destroyed, the Zorvath Dominion officially ceased to exist. Their former territories fell into chaos, with many species reclaiming their freedom. Humanity, once a small and unknown race, had now become a galactic power. But unlike the Zorvath, they did not conquer or enslave. Instead, they formed alliances, helping rebuild the civilizations that had once suffered under Zorvath rule. For the first time in history, the galaxy was no longer ruled by fear, and humanity stood at the center of it all. The final message. In the ruins of the Dominion's empire, the last surviving Zorvath leaders sent one final transmission to Earth. It was a simple question. Why did you fight so hard? Why not surrender? Admiral Carter's response was just as simple. Because we are human, and we never kneel. The final message. A new era begins. The war was over. The Zorvath Dominion, once feared across the stars, had been destroyed. Their fleets lay in ruins. Their warlords were dead. Their empire, which had stood for thousands of years, was now nothing but history. And humanity, the species they had underestimated, had won. But victory was not the end. Now, humanity faced a new challenge, deciding what came next. The galaxy watches. The news of the Dominion's defeat spread across every star system. Billions of alien species, those who had once lived in fear of the Zorvath, now looked toward humanity with a mixture of awe, respect, and uncertainty. Would the humans become the next conquerors? Would they claim the throne of the fallen Dominion? Or would they do something different? Many feared the worst. But what happened next shocked the galaxy. Humanity chooses a different path. Admiral Elias Carter, now hailed as the hero of Earth, stood before the United Earth Council, surrounded by leaders from across human space. The galaxy waited for humanity's decision. Would they seize power? Would they rule through fear like the Zorvath once did? Carter's voice was calm, strong, and resolute as he spoke the words that would shape the future. We did not fight this war to replace one tyrant with another. We fought because no one should live under chains. And we will not become the monsters we defeated. Across the galaxy, species that had once been enslaved, oppressed, and hunted listened in stunned silence. Humanity was not claiming an empire. They were offering a new future. A future without warlords, without conquest, without fear. For the first time in history, the galaxy was free. And it was because of humanity. The final transmission. The last surviving Zorvath warlords, now exiled to the dark edges of space, sent one final transmission to Earth. It was short. You should have taken the throne. You had the power. Why waste it? Admiral Carter's response was just as short. Because we are human, and we never kneel. Not to you, not to anyone. That was the last time anyone heard from the Zorvath. Their age was over. Humanity's had just begun. A new dawn for the galaxy. With the Dominion gone, a new era began. The first Galactic Council was formed. An alliance of species working together, no longer ruled by fear. Former Zorvath slave worlds were freed, given the chance to rebuild their civilizations. Humanity's influence grew, not through conquest, but through respect and unity. And among the stars, human explorers set out once again, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as pioneers seeking new worlds, new knowledge, and new challenges. Because that was what humanity had always done. They fought. They endured. They rose again. And now, they look to the future, not as masters of the galaxy, but as its greatest defenders. The end, but not the end of humanity's story. The war was over. But for humanity, the real adventure had only just begun.